Hello, hello. Good evening and welcome to this evening's play briefing for First Casualty by Christopher Johnston, our last one for the year. Before we begin tonight, I feel like a kid with my... Sorry, I'll try and be serious. Before we begin tonight, I'd just like to honour the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, the Turrbal and Yagara people. This has always been a place of storytelling, and we will be adding another story to this place in just a few days' time. I'm not Lee Lewis. My name is Daniel Evans. I'm an associate artist here at Queensland Theatre, and it's my pleasure to be with you all tonight. Lee is, of course, in the director's seat tonight, so the tables have turned somewhat, and we get to ask all of our burning questions about this play. First Casualty was meant to open this year's season, but here we are, some 10 months later, through flood and plague, closing 2022 with this debut work from serving soldier and veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, Christopher Johnston, who can't join us tonight because he is on a secret mission elsewhere. That's the official word. This season, you've been transported to 19th century Paris in Bernhardt Hamlet, through to the glittering renegade ballroom of the Sunshine Club, and now we're concluding this year's adventure with a slightly different panorama. Combat Outpost Mirage is a tiny fortification overlooking a beautiful valley in the forbidding mountains of Afghanistan's Uruzgan province. I was practicing this out the back. It was my big moment, between the Helmand River and Kandahar. From this place, Captain Trent Kelly and his men have a lot to deal with. When they aren't mentoring a platoon from the Afghan National Army, they're patrolling the Taliban insurgents, negotiating with a powerful local warlord, or simply making it through another day a long way from home. Tonight we are joined by the cast and crew of First Casualty, who are less like a creative team and more like a battalion at this stage. Look at how many people we have here. It's incredible to have this many creatives on our final production of the year. They're here tonight to reveal a glimpse behind the process that it's taken to prepare this colossal work for the stage. So if I can get all of you to sound off, military term, about who you are and the role you play in First Casualty, that would be amazing. We might start from this way and undulate over and across.
I'm Paul Jackson, I'm the lighting designer.
Let's keep with the microphones, yeah?
Okay, sure. Hello, I'm Paul Jackson, I'm the lighting designer.
Hello, I'm Bridget O'Brien, I'm the assistant stage manager.
I'm Will Bartolo, I'm playing Corporal Nick Woods.
I don't know. I'm Stephen Rook. I'm playing Sergeant Jack Hunter.
Hi, my name is Amir, and I'm playing Malam Khan, Warlord number 1.
Hi, I'm Kevin Spink, and I'm playing the journalist.
Hi, I'm Craig Wilkinson, video designer.
Hi, I'm Renee Mulder, and I'm the set and costume designer.
Hi, I'm Regan Mannix, and I'm playing Sapper Tomo Kent.
I'm Mitchell Burke, and I'm playing Captain Trent Kelly.
I'm Nigel Polton, and I'm playing the movement and fight director.
I'm Dan Venz, and I'm playing... choreographer.
Hey, I'm James Robinson, music director and orchestrations.
Hi, I'm Adam Kay. I'm playing Ahmed, journalist, and Morgra brother.
Hi, I'm Reza Momenzada. I'm playing Ali, the interpreter who works for the ADF soldiers.
I'm Lucy. I'm the stage manager.
Hi, I'm Silver Pierce. I'm playing Abdul and Ensemble.
Hi, I'm Kristen O'Leary, and I'm playing all the female roles. I'm playing Brigadier Michaela Kane, I'm playing Trent's wife, Lucy, and I'm playing a psychologist and an Afghan lady.
Okay, so a big disclaimer about this evening is that, as you can see, there are a ton of amazing creative brains on this stage. So I'm not going to be able to ask questions to all of them, but if you have a burning question for anyone on this stage, keep it in your mind, log it, and I'm going to throw it open to the floor in just a few minutes' time. But before I do, I have some questions. I've got some burning questions of my own. I'm going to start with Lee Lewis at the front. My question to you, I guess the first question I have for you is, you've been with this play for quite a while, and you've been quite a fierce advocate of it since you encountered it, I think, in the QPD, the Queensland Premier's Drama Award. What first attracted you to this work, particularly? And I guess it's been years now, hasn't it? And has your relationship to the work changed? Or tell us a bit about what your journey's been with it, I guess, since you first read it.
I read it in a first draft that came into the Premier's Award readings, and I was one of the jury members. It wasn't shortlisted because Christopher couldn't get permission from the Army for it to be public at that point. And I just kept in touch with him and the play. I was working at Griffin at the time, so my job was New Australian Plays. And there was something that I'd heard inside the play that I hadn't heard before. At that point, I was probably reading about 200 new plays a year, and there was a genuinely different voice inside this which excited me. And it was to do with the way these men, these soldiers that Christopher was writing, the way he was writing them. It was just so, it was a window into a world that I knew nothing about. And this was 2015-16 as far as I can recall. And so the war in Afghanistan was current, and I felt a lot of shame, actually, that I knew nothing about the war, that I wasn't asking questions, and that my curiosity was somehow had been blunted or numbed or something like that. And the play woke a curiosity up in me. And so I contacted Christopher and I said, hey, is anyone else working on it? He went, no. And I said, well, if I can scratch together a bit of money, do you want to do a reading? And we did that, and there was a group of actors that asked a lot of questions about how the world could grow, because Christopher isn't a playwright, so there were things theatrically. He had a story he wanted to tell, but he was figuring out how to tell it theatrically. So he heard all of that, and the beautiful thing I've discovered about a playwright who's also a soldier is that he's used to hearing feedback and responding to it. I'm like, wow, that doesn't always happen with playwrights. No, and it was to do with how he'd been trained. It was to actually hear criticism, hear genuine questions from actors about things that they weren't finding. And a few months later, another draft came in, and it had got significantly better, which again doesn't always happen. And the play grew bit by bit. Reza was in one of those early readings and had a lot of questions about Ali, the interpreter, and what that role was, both to the soldiers but also in the play. And the questions that you had, he started to answer. And then that just took us across a few years. And then I was going to do it at Griffin, which would have been crazy because no one else wanted to do it, and I thought it was really important. And that's the job of that little theatre company, but it would have been stupid to put a show this big in that space. And then when I got the job here, I went, aha, awesome. And then COVID happened. So that explains a little bit of the delay. But across that time, Christopher has filled the play up with more and more knowledge and understanding. The questions he was asking of himself in 2014, 2015 have changed, but so has the Australian public in our understanding of Afghanistan, the questions we have. So I think the play has been growing across time as the country has.
Right. Oh, brilliant. It's a really intense, it's an intense story, and it's a very, full of a lot of grit. I guess my question, I'm going to direct this to Mitchell, Steve, Regan, and maybe Will. You four kind of sit at the centre of the narrative as these Australian kind of soldiers who are serving overseas. I'm interested in, maybe from a couple of you, what was your first impression when you read the script? Had you read anything like it, or was it a bit, what struck you immediately about it? Maybe Steve, do you want to?
Go first, mate. Thanks. Thank you for your question, Dan.
No worries.
I had no warning whatsoever that one was coming. No, I'm kidding. Look, I read the play for the first time only a few months ago. I was a relatively late into the process. And on my first reading, I just thought, whoa, this is a massive story that is exciting and like nothing else I've ever read. My second thought is, we've got a lot of work to do if we're going to make this happen. But then, very quickly after that, well, it was actually only a few days after I was cast that we went on a boot camp. So some of the cast went out to a private property with one of our commandos, former commandos, and a few other soldiers, including Christopher. And they took us through 3 days of training, weapons training. We slept in swags, we ate some rations, we waded through cold water, we did orienteering and all sorts of different skills. We touched on the first day, a lot of different skills that might be needed, and mostly the ones that were needed in the script, which was a massive boon for, is that the right word? Okay, whew. I just had a moment. What do they call it? Semantic, anyway. I just heard this phrase that I love. Anyway, this very quickly, it became about the responsibility of the actors to tell the story well and to tell it with an accuracy and a level of detail that you've probably never seen in a story about soldiers before. You've probably seen lots of stories with soldiers in them, but I don't think any of them would have sort of had the guidance from someone like Lee and Christopher and Matt and Justin and some of the other guys that came out with us to take us through what the lives are really like. And I've talked enough.
The play, when I first read the play, it was something I hadn't read, literally I haven't read before. But also that, what kind of military, there's no plays that are kind of action and military and set in Afghanistan, let alone any kind of form of media that is Australian, Australian stories in Afghanistan, which I thought is the most kind of unique thing about this story. But when my first initial kind of takeaway from it was the inclusion of the interpreter, the ANA interpreters, and I haven't seen any kind of stories like that ever. And that was my kind of biggest, the thing that ticked my brain over and going, this is something really special. But yeah, short and sweet.
Basically, when I first read it over a year ago, was that it had me first just interested in that I didn't know a lot about what happened over there. So the play answers questions, but it also leaves me with questions, which I think is a really great thing because it reveals what happened to these men, these people, the families of these people back here. But then it leaves the audience and the person reading the play with so many more questions, which I think is a great thing that it does, that it allows us to then talk about it when we leave here, or when you leave here in the next 5 weeks. And you can go home and you can, I don't know, most people that I've talked to about it have had someone, whether it was all the way back to World War I, involved in the military. And this play speaks to that, about how Australia has come so far and its war effort and being an ally to those who need it. But just the heart and the soul of the play and giving the respect and to the people who have protected us for so long. So,
thanks, Mitch. I want to go to Nigel now, actually. Oh, Will, would you like to say something? No? Copy. Move on. Someone's got a question for Will. You can ask in just a moment. Nigel, question. You are on this as intimacy and fight director, choreographer extraordinaire. How do you go about approaching developing a kind of physical vocabulary for a show like this? That is, we are summoning, as you can probably all see from this design, I'll speak to Renee shortly, that this is a stripped back minimalist design. The body is the story here. How do you go about designing, I guess? Do you design a program? Do you literally direct a movement sequence? How do you conceive the physicality for this show?
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, it's it's not a linear approach. I don't think it's coming at the production from all different angles. And a big part of it is developing the movement competencies of the actors, developing their agility and their strength and conditioning. We've been blessed with this incredible design that Renee has come up with, and we've had it in the rehearsal room. This is our rehearsal room. We've been in this space since the first week of rehearsals, which is an absolute privilege to have, and it's so rare. But I guess it's a testament to the weight and the importance that that Lee and the company put on this story, that we would have this architecture to invest in from the word go. So we train on it every day. We spend a good part of the morning training on it, doing various exercises, and it's process-based training to try and allow the actors to not only get familiar with the space, but also integrate all of the extraordinary training that they did. The actors just absorbed the information that they got on the boot camp. They just absolutely absorbed it. So it's wonderful to just capitalise on that language already. And obviously a big part of it is an important part of it is to represent the military in the way that, in a respectful way, I think, and part of that respect is acknowledging their skill sets without making kind of general assumptions about it. And I think we've gone a long way towards that, I think. But also a big part of the work is bringing us all together as an ensemble. So even though I'm talking specifically about the 4 soldiers, we are an ensemble of wonderful performers, and the important part of the work for me is to just keep reinforcing the fact that we're all in this together, developing this show, and everyone has a voice, and everyone has needs, and we're doing our best to meet that. So we're developing ourselves together as we move through this rehearsal process.
Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in there, Dan. We've
Totally.
been incredibly blessed to have Nigel on this show, because the script itself moves through a whole lot of different landscapes. As the soldier, it's representing the base, it's representing Are we in Baghdad? I'm making that up. Dubai. We're in Dubai. There are a number of different spaces that the playwright moves us through, and the wonderful Renee Mulder was left with the challenge of how to represent the world. And when she came up with this, I fell in love with it. I was like, this is going to be beautiful. It'll transform. It'll allow the scenes to shift in a very fluid way. But I was like, how are we going to get everybody up to working on this with confidence and with artistry as opposed to fear? Because there are some quite steep drop-offs up the back there. And so that was like, so Nigel, if you could take care of that, that would be great. And the depth of Nigel's practice in building up capacity of actors across a very short space of time is extraordinary. So I just wanted to thank you, sitting all the way up there, for the sculpting you've done, the kind of human sculpting that you've done to help us see these bodies in this space as both vulnerable but also very strong.
I might just, on that note, bounce to Renee, because we're all sitting on your set. I'm terrified, and I'm on the lowest one. So, well done, Nigel. What was the inspiration? What was the impetus behind this? How did you kind of conceive of this topography that we were all kind of seeing here? What was the process for you?
Well, after reading the script and having initial discussions with Lee, it was like, how are we going to do this? Because it was like, it reads like a film, ultimately. You know, we're in the mountains of the Hindu Kush, we're in Dubai in an office, we're on the base, we're out on the patrol. It felt like, and it felt, well, we also identified it as kind of, it's sort of fragments of memory coming from Christopher. So in a way, the best way to actually sort of suggest the world that we're in is heavily stylized and a landscape. So this is the landscape of memory in a way that we're all sort of playing on, and we can isolate these spaces, we can bring it out wide, you know, it's the idea of, and it's also extremely physical as well, and, you know, the danger of, you know, stepping, it's like the danger of stepping on landmines, you know, is kind of like the danger of how we navigate the world that we're currently playing on at the moment. So there were so many sort of references to that kind of sense of danger and action that we were kind of looking for, and also looking at the textures that would have been on the base. So there's sort of hessian, black hessian that's kind of, you know, around these walls here. The top decks are kind of like the raw plywood, except it's all greyed and weathered from, you know, from being outside for such a long time. So it's sort of the elements are kind of referencing the environment of the base.
Yeah, great.
I think Paul put it quite well when he said that there are 16 small stages and one big stage. And that was quite a beautiful way to look at it. And then that question of the fragments of memory and how we remember things. We remember things in bits, never the whole picture.
Yes. And I want to come to that now because I feel as though Christopher has written this from his own lived experience. But I think what's so unique about this production is like Reza, Amir, Silva, Adam, you're kind of drawing on actual experience. You're kind of marrying, you know, experience much more closer to home with the places that this play is set. I'm wondering, how has that been for you, marrying that together with this kind of fiction? Has that been rewarding or challenging or discombobulating? Like, how's that process been? Because we're all strangers here, but you probably know this much better than we do.
It has been rewarding and challenging at the same time. The rewarding part of it, and just like Nigel said, it's a blessing to be here and to be with this amazing group of people. There are days that I go home very exhausted, out of energy, and I just think about why I'm here, the story that I'm here to tell, and the people that I'm working with. That just energizes me to come back here the next day. That's a huge reward. The challenging part of it is I thought I could play Ali just because he is from the same country as I am, speaks the same language. Ali being a victim of war, if I could say that, I thought it would be easy to play that. And boy, was I wrong about that. Ali is a very complex character. Lee worked very hard with me to get a good understanding of who he is, the world that he lives in. A survivor, a fighter, a man, I'm going to use Lee's words if I can. She put him right there next to Captain Kelly, a man of extraordinary capacity. That took me a while to actually find that about Ali. That's been quite a challenge for me. But at the same time, what a reward to be here every day to work with this amazing group of people. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else like to add to that answer at all? Mule.
My first time when I read my character, it was like, it's pulled me back to my country because I left Syria in 2017. So the war memory is still fresh in my mind. So when I was reading this play, I said, yeah, I know all the details inside this story. Yeah, exactly, we have these things happened. The big challenge for me, it was how I have to deal again with the sounds here, with the conflicts between the characters, between like Taliban and the Australian soldiers, because we faced the same thing in Syria. But I felt like I have to like face these things. I don't want to hide from anything. It's good for me because it was in good time for me because I'm writing my play. So all my memory now fresh. Remember even the fragment things in my story. Malam Khan, I'm playing Malam Khan. Malam Khan, he's warlord. He's like patriarch, philosopher. He likes the money, but at the same time, he has to deal with the Australian soldier. So I felt like, yeah, I know this character from my country. So all the things, you will see that when you come to see us. All these details, the sounds, the everything, I was like, every time I hear the sounds, I close my eyes and remember everything, what happened. And this is good things because I think you have the right to know what's happening overseas. So always I say to myself, I'm here for purpose. This play, it is one of them, and I have to continue to let you know what's happening there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to come to maybe Craig and Paul now because I feel as though this is perhaps a exciting kind of design to create angles or textures within, and you have to kind of take us, as Renee was saying, to all those different places. I'm wondering, what role do you, maybe for you, Paul, first, what role do you find that light is playing in this as you're beginning to tech or beginning to like plot lights and stuff? What role does light play in this work?
Well, this is a design that's a complete delight to be lighting. Basically, because it can constantly reconfigure. So I'm always interested in the way light can transform spaces and stitch people into environments. So I'm constantly trying to work out how to investigate this space, really. I mean, there's so many different configurations available and so many different surfaces to work with. So in many ways, it's about, for me, often about building a big machine that I can play with, really. And then trying to find a way to tell the various threads of the narratives simultaneously within a space. Yeah.
Great. Gosh, beautiful. So, Craig, as a microphone travels to you, we know your amazing video work from Boys Swallows Universe. Here you are back again on another blockbuster show. But this time you're kind of using screens this time. I'm wondering what character, I guess, are you kind of pitching the video as in this work? Or what kind of role is it playing for you at the moment?
I guess in terms of the overall design, because we have gone so stylized in a way, this is a fragmented world and a world of memory. I think the screens in kind of configuration, as you can see around the space, are also fragmented, but it also gives us a canvas in which we can kind of ground the reality of the world of Afghanistan beyond what we know from Hollywood representation of sand and kind of yellow kind of world. Afghanistan itself is actually beautiful in a lot of kind of places, from gorgeous kind of blue rivers through to a lot of green. So I think video in this instance helps place us and remind us of that. And it's used in other ways as well in terms of translation. So it's kind of a multi-layered character in many ways.
Now, if anyone's been following Instagram of late, Craig's takeover last week featured a green screen and a goat. For this show, Craig?
Indeed, yes. Whilst everyone in here was getting down and dirty and serious, I was out with a camera and a green screen and two goats, Jesus and Jafar, which the beautiful owner Silver there owned and let us into the place. And when they say don't work with, or the show business saying of don't work with children and animals, they're absolutely right when it still comes to goats. We walked in with the idea that we could get 5 minutes of continuous footage. I think we got about 40 seconds, but we have worked movie magic, and it's a bit of a Where's Wally moment in the show.
Yes, great. We'll all be looking out for that. And Silver, I'm so glad they're going to be playing alongside you in this show.
They've
this
got
was
their
a
own
moment-
agent now.
I'm just going to
No,
say, this
you're
was a
an agent.
moment of a playwright going rogue. We were talking about doing the show. I was up here in Queensland. I think if I'd been at Griffin, he would never have dared to put the goats in, because where would they go? So this draft came in, and suddenly there were 2 goats. And I was like, where did those come from? And what? And he was like, no, they were like there were animals around all the time. And I was like, yeah, not in my theatre, in my beautiful Bill Brown theatre. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. And one of the actors in the readings said, I said, well, I wouldn't even know how to manage a goat. And this beautiful young man from Afghanistan said, no, it's fine. I'll just throw them over my shoulder. I'm like. And then I have the animal activists after me. I'm like, okay. So it's been a backwards forwards with Christopher. Dick explained to him I was not going to have goats on the stage. And look, I've had lambs, I've had bunnies, I've had dogs, all sorts of things. And Silver very kindly then said, yes, I have 2 goats. So, of course, then playwright says, well, see? And I'm like, so ultimately I just had to say to him, I don't want a goat weeing on my set. Because I love my actors and I don't want them to have to roll around on a set that has been weed on by a goat. And call it my limitation, but I just went, no. And then someone came to me and said, oh no, when goats get stressed, they head to high ground and they don't care how they get there. And I just had visions of goats climbing over audience members, and I was like, so actually they're in my dreams. Now I am haunted by goats. And Silver, we said thank you very much, but can we film the goats? So there will be goats, but they will be
Maybe
digital.
closing night, bring them on. Why not?
No!
What a thrill. Okay, there's some people we haven't spoken to on this stage yet, and I'm going to... Okay, here comes a spoiler alert, so we're amongst friends, so if you don't want to know a major situation in this play, close your ears for the next 10 minutes. But I want to talk about an amazing thing that happens in this play. When I read the draft, I was like, whoa, it takes a lot to surprise me when I read a draft, and I was like, whoa, this is really strange, but exciting. And so Kristen O'Leary over there, hello, it feels so far away, plays an instrumental role in this little twist in the play, because halfway, maybe a quarter of a way through Act 2, we are treated to a musical number, and it's a fully fledged musical number. I'm talking choreography, incredible score, costume changes, the works. It's quite amazing. So sorry if I've ruined that for anyone, but it's fantastic. And now you can look out for it, like the goats. Kristen, I'm wondering, it's a bit of a right turn moment in the play, and you kind of spearhead, your character, Brigadier Kane, kind of spearheads that moment. What is that moment about for all of us who'll be coming to see it? How have you kind of found your entry point into that moment in the show?
Well, I hope I get this right.
It's okay, Lee's watching.
Can I put a little frame around it that might help? This is a provocation from the playwright about how the top brass and the media were in relation to the lived experiences of the soldiers on the ground. So what he did was, what he's created is a moment of satirical musical to try and convey to us what it was like for them to have people come in on a helicopter into their space for 20 minutes and then fly away and tell that as the story of their deployment to us in Australia. So this is their opinion, his opinion as a soldier of what we saw on our screens in Australia on the news at night. And Kristen is playing the brigadier who comes in on the helicopter, and everything is fine and beautiful.
Yes. The ceiling opens. So, Kristen, with that in mind, I guess how do you begin to plot that in your head to kind of like almost like switch forms maybe, or switch languages?
Yeah, well, as Lee's just brilliantly articulated, that Christopher made this point that it always felt like a song and dance, that when the brass come to town, there's such a juxtaposition against what the reality of their experience on the ground is in comparison to what we see and what they then have to accept when the school gets opened and the cameras roll. And so he has taken a very, very bold move of throwing that moment into musical form. And so the whole show shifts on an axis where we are in musical theatre for 7.5 minutes. And that's full costume, full choreo, full orchestration, which you can talk to James and Dan about, it's truly like being in a Disney musical. And the skill, of course, to answer your question, is to absolutely make that U-turn with every single cell in your body and every ounce of skill, technical skill you've got, so that the audience goes from one world to another and goes, what the hell just happened? And so from day one, we started learning the song on day one and the choreo day 2. And as Nigel works with us every day in our physical world on these platforms, so too we've worked every single day on the vocal and choreography.
Which kind of brings me to James and Dan sitting up there. How's this process been for you? Have you kind of had to run your own race? Did you read the rest? Obviously, you read the rest of the script, but how did you go about locating this 7.5-minute musical inside this otherwise rather somber and kind of gritty, action-packed kind of play?
Yeah, I did. I read the play, I think, 1.5 years ago when Lee approached me about doing it and loved the play and thought this was like a extremely audacious thing to do in the middle of a pretty serious straight play. And the idea that it was showbiz sort of informed the way that we approached it, like quoting from the big showbiz musicals like Chicago and Gypsy and Chorus Line, and using that as...
All of them.
All of them, literally all of them. To support Christopher's provocation that, this thing that we were seeing is not actually what was going on, but like a performance.
I guess I'm quite lucky in that it's such a collaborative piece in what we're doing. So Chris had obviously such a strong idea of what he wanted to be portraying as he was writing the piece. Lee's obviously got such a strong vision for what she wanted to see from the number as well to support that. And then we've got people like Nigel who had already broken the back for us in terms of a physicality of the performers throughout the show that I got to piggyback off. And then of course the structure of the music, which is trying to find the balance of, I guess, of the reality still within the non-reality, if that makes sense. It's still real people in a real sort of situation, but such a heightened version. So it's just it's been a really delicate balance with how we can try and make all of that fit into the world, so that we are proving that it is this alien moment in time without being too far removed. And the structure of the music, which is so militant, I really came in and just sort of filled in the lines with some colour, which has been excellent.
And also a bunch of extremely game actors who were thrown into the fire doing something that they don't usually do, probably.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, no.
From the day 2 when we had our first call, and I'm pretty sure I've never seen wider eyes in my life. People, they're just, a cast of people just going, what do you mean? Step, ball, change, kick, what? How am I supposed to do that? And sing? This is ridiculous. But the growth that's happened over the last few weeks has been really exceptional. So, I think it respectfully and delicately sort of balances that line of something that's really quite unrealistic in a very real world and real world situation.
Can I just add to that really quickly? The thing about the people that have worked on the movement and choreography and singing and that struck me straight away was that the day one that we got to work with them, they pushed us as far as we could possibly go as like a trial, as a test, to see where our limits were and at what point we were going to break. And then they went, okay, so we'll go half a step back from that, and that's where we're going to play it. And then designed and created the song and the dance and the costume and everything around just below our breaking points. So we're really going, as hard as we can. But it's a brilliant tactic. Like it's been a brilliant move, and I think it pays massive dividends.
I think that if the Venn diagram between musical theatre and military isn't as far apart as we might actually think.
Exactly.
In my experience.
No, and And seriously, over the years with the script, as various soldiers have read the script and come to readings and even a musical workshop a couple of years ago, I've said to them, you know, what do you like about the play? What do you think of the musical? And they're like, oh, it's brilliant. It's exactly what it feels like. And I've been really disconcerted by that because honestly, as a producer, I would love to cut the musical. It would save me a lot of money. But every soldier has said, oh no, that's the most real part of the play. Whenever the brass would come, it was they used to call it dog and pony show. And we've got to do this dog and pony. And I said, well, what was that like when they would leave? Was that just weird? And they were like, oh yeah, it's weird. I said, well, why did you do it? And they're like, I said, did you do a good job? Were you tempted to not do a good job? And they're like, oh, you'd never do a bad job. You do it to the best of your ability. I was like, why? And they were like, because Mum might see me on the TV. My heart kind of broke. Because you kind of go, and there's something of that in this. So I think there's a really brave gesture being made by a person from inside the experience, and I feel like our responsibility as theatre makers is to try and make that, to try and let him communicate to the audience what it felt like. And even if I find that weird, all of the soldiers have said, no, absolutely, you cannot touch the musical. It's the most real thing about it.
It's a truly magic moment. I'm going to ask one more question and then start thinking about those questions. To stage management, Lucy, maybe I'll come to you if I can. How big is this show? Like, because we're sitting here, I'm just wondering, like, do you have a sense of how many cues yet, or like the level of prop or costume, or how big does it feel to you? And how do you get out of bed every morning when you think about
question.
that?
Yeah, it's a big show. It's very big. Big cast, big creatives, big props, big set. It's all very big, but it's awesome. Like, everyone involved is just the best of the best. So it's pretty cool to be able to bring such a big show to life. Yeah, lots of work so far, lots of work to come. Big week this week and into next week. But yeah, I wake up with lots of coffee.
Good, you need it. I think at one stage, towards the end of Act 1, this script splits into like 6 columns of dialogue and stage direction, and now probably video cueing, Craig, sound, lighting. So the moment before intermission is like, it's HBO. It's amazing. It's like a real blockbuster situation. I had one small part to read in it and one development once, and I almost had a heart attack. So it's amazing. It's pretty unreal. Over to you, peeps out there. What do you want to know? Who has a burning question? Yes, question.
Is that me?
Yes, correct. Yes, it was yes.
So it would seem to me that this is going to present a very different view of the military to what we normally see as part of the Anzac legend. It might actually tell the truth in a contemporary context, and in many ways we haven't had the truth for a very long time. How are you all going to look after yourselves when you're doing this show night after night?
I'm just going to repeat that question for anyone who didn't hear that. The question was, this play looks like it's going to be delving towards a certain truth that we haven't seen on stage in a long time. It's a hard truth. How is this cast and crew going to look after each other? And I think answering it is Silva.
Yeah. Hi. I'm just sorry. Your question really caught me because I sit in my own world in an interesting place. Like, I go to trivia at my local RSL every Wednesday. That's the thing. I have friends of mine who served in the army, who served in my country. I have people who are from my country and other countries that are friends, and just trying to understand how to explain to people what self-care and sort of the exposure to the, well, it's theatre, it's play, yes, but the exposure to the ideas and the thoughts and all of that, it is quite meticulously difficult. I think every day I've had to go home and debrief to my wonderful husband, who just looks at me and he's like, okay, so you're good? I'm like, yeah, maybe, I think so. I'll have that cheeseburger now. So it's not an easy task, but I will say that it has been a new learning form of self-care, and it's kind of exposure therapy / debrief with yourself at the end of every day. And I believe Nigel was saying, create that threshold. At that point of threshold, try to walk out and allow what is in here is in here. I think we as professionals, we always don't want to bring anything into work. It's been a new process of learning how to leave things at work. That's what I've learned. So I thought I had to let you know that in the sense of there is no right way, there's multiple ways. So.
Yeah, if I may add. For me, I think the biggest help is the cast themselves. Nigel had a thing right at the beginning where he said, tap out and do a group closure. A simple act of hugging each other, a group hug, helps a lot. This beautiful man here, which I had not met before, he came up to me one night. I don't know what he saw in me. He said, we should hug it out at the end of every day. That helps me a lot. That helps a lot. So yeah.
Beautiful. Question from, I'll come over here, I'll come this way. Anyone? Question. Yes, blue jacket. No, blue shirt. Question about the playwright. Has he been involved? Is he happy? Is he excited? Has he accepted what you're doing? The playwright at large. Lee Lewis.
Okay, yes, Christopher has been very involved. He's currently learning Japanese because his next posting is as Australia's military attaché to Japan in 2024. So he's absorbing Japanese at the moment, and he's up in Japan. I think he's hating being up in Japan in this week when it all gets put together. He arrives back on Saturday, at which point we will be at our first preview. So I think he's hated losing control. You're not in intelligence in the military because you don't like control. And I think every playwright struggles with handing their words over to a group of people, because even if they're exactly the people you've imagined, as soon as that person opens their mouth and walks across a stage, it's different to how you imagined it. And letting the work go, letting it go into a whole room of people, all with their different intelligences, I think that's difficult for every playwright. And then there's the military brain on top of that. So look, I hope he's okay with it. He's not here tonight, so he can't actually talk for himself. But I think that he's been both amazed by the performers, by the actors and their skill, and also a little bit overwhelmed by it. It's a huge thing to see a story that you've had on paper for so many years actually start to stand up and walk around, and he's got a director going, oh, I don't think you need that line. And he goes, no, you definitely need it. I'm like, no, look, see, when the actor tilts their head that way, we get that idea. So letting sentences become a shape. It's a leap, but I think he's managed really well. Either that or he's run away to Japan and we're never going to see him again. I don't know.
Copy that. Yes, white shirt. So that question is, this play was written in 2011, and the question is, has there been any response to what happened in 2021 when the Taliban returned?
No, he's kept it very clear, very, very clear of the knowledge he didn't have when he first wrote it. And I think that's important. The thing about having a soldier having written this, and especially Christopher, what he brings into it, is his capacity to identify a moment, a turning point in the conflict in 2011, the moment when the rules of engagement changed and therefore changed Australia's entire engagement. I don't know that a regular playwright would have been able to identify that moment so specifically, and I think it's a gift to the nation that he's done that, so that we can start to understand better what was happening there. I'm glad that he is not looking back from the perspective of the withdrawal, because I think that's a whole other story. And what I hope is that this play is the beginning of a lot of stories. What it does open up at the end is an idea that there are many perspectives. This is one that is seeking to humanise the soldier's experience, but it by no means tells the whole story. In fact, I think I've got a couple of up-and-coming playwrights sitting in this cast. Might take them a while, but there'll be more stories that come from here. But no, very much contained to a vision of what happened in 2011.
Amazing. Question down here, is that correct? Yes. A second.
I'm a Vietnam vet, and I wanted to find out what was going on with our lads in Afghanistan. And the only thing that I could find out is what I read in the papers or what I saw for a couple of minutes on television. Now, I'm coming to see the show because I want to see and hear the lads who served in Afghanistan talk the same talk as we did back in '68. I want to see that, how they talk on the stage.
I'm just going to prepare you for the fact that there's probably not as much swearing.
I don't know about that.
Well, no, look, there has been one other play written by a soldier in World War II. It was a play called Rusty Bugles, and that play was banned by the Defence Forces because they didn't like the representation of the soldiers, and mostly it was around the swearing. So I think Christopher's been quite careful in that way, still, ironically, still. But they're definitely, the soldiers who are his mates, who have seen readings over the years, have talked about the strangeness of hearing their sentences come out of the mouths of actors. So it's very close. It's fiction. It is definitely fictionalised, but you'll hear that's what attracted me to the play, was the voices of these soldiers in this time.
Yeah, there's all, there's the naughtiness, there's the courage, there's the mateship. It's just a beautiful play. It's like it's a zoomed in lens on people living their lives in extreme circumstances, and what it took to get through that. How anyone would lift any mate up, mentally and physically. So I hope we do you proud, mate. Yeah.
The thing about Christopher having been in intelligence is that he's always listening, and you don't know when he's absorbing something that's going to get included in the play. So when we went out to boot camp, we would sit around the campfire and tell jokes and tell stories, and then we'd get another draft of the play, and some of our jokes would be in the play. So I think you'll be pleased to know that most of the dialogue in the play has probably been stored in his memory from somewhere or another for the last 10 or 12 years, from actual conversations that he had or heard from people, and he's just got a computer data bank of gigabytes of conversations and words and language up in his head, which is now on paper.
Amazing. Thank you for that comment. Yes, Green at the back. Hello. So question is, Kristen plays 4 female roles in this play, and what is the impact of one female in a very male-dominated cast?
Well, I suppose I can't really answer what the impact is from the man's perspective or the male actor's perspective. I sort of really meant, what impact do the women have in their lives? Well, one of the characters I play, as we've mentioned, is Brigadier Kane. So she is, she's leading the forces in Afghanistan, but of course she doesn't put foot on the ground in any kind of combat sense. She's well and truly brass. So she represents power. She represents hierarchy to these men. In actual fact, of course, there's never been a female brigadier in that position. So he's taken license in that regard. which I have to get my brain around because, of course, as the only female and as her being the only character of rank above these men in this play, it seems like a statement that it's a woman, when in fact it wasn't a woman. But yeah, I put that there, you know, that's all right. You've just got to play her for who she is on the page. I also play Captain Kelly's wife, but you'll only hear her, you won't see her. And I think that is a very important element in his journey in the play because it is the female voice of home. It is the female voice of marriage and family that you literally hear. And she is only that to him on the phone because he can't see her. And as tricky as that is to do, because I only have that to work with, which is great in a way because you'd never believe in a million years I'd be married to Mitch. It's tricky in that you have to pull the full nuance of conversation only into the voice. You won't get my face or my body telling that story. But I think that does have a great impact in his journey because it's the pull of home for him. There is, of course, you can't help but have the sense that you are the only female in a cast and there are very few female voices in the play. But I have reconciled that with the fact that this is not a story of, this is their story. This is this story. It's not this story. And what I try to do is to bring deep integrity to every single one of those small roles so that the effect they do have in the bigger story is profound where it needs to be profound.
Beautiful answer. Thank you, Kristen. We've got time for a couple more questions. I'm just going to come over to you, sir. Yes, with the bag. Yes.
Just a point of correction in relation to something Kristen said. In relatively recent times before the withdrawal, the Australian Army did have a female Major General commanding forces in the Middle East, daughter-in-law of a friend of mine.
Oh, there you go. Snap. Brilliant. And up the back, did you have a question? Yes. Okay. Gosh, good question. This is a question about research. In terms of research for this play, lots to get your head around, I imagine. I'm not sure who wants to take this one on, but is this something that you did in the lead up to the production, inside the rehearsal room? Where did research fit for you? Who wants to take this one? Adam, yes.
Hello. I am, regarding research, I think, well, in short, it's both. I come from an Israeli heritage, so has nothing to do with the characters that I am playing. I am playing an ANA soldier and a Taliban brother. There is a lot of work when it comes down to understanding the culture and the empathy. I think when I was offered this role, my first thought was, I have to fully transform then. And that comes with a lot of work, a lot of research. There are many languages happening in this show that are connected to the specific region those characters are coming from within Afghanistan. And there's a lot of dialect work, a lot of text work, language work, which Reza and Owen really helped me out with. But I think it all comes down to cultural understanding and empathy. Just putting yourself in someone else's shoes, understanding where it all comes from, and then obviously bring that back to regular acting work.
And you do the research and the hard work so that you can then forget about it, because it's just ultimately a story about people connecting, human connections, and these are men and one woman that are doing jobs, but it's a story about the way that we react to each other as humans in extreme circumstances. So the research is there, and we've been provided all of the resources wonderfully, but you do it and then you try and forget that you learnt it, so that you're not pretending to be something that you're not. You're just doing it and connecting with your fellow scene mate or mates.
Let's comment on that real quick, because what the play is saying is that we don't have a lot of access to what happened over there. So in terms of the research about going online and trying to find things, hard. But the guys like Christopher and Christopher's mates that have opened up their hearts and their minds, and memories, have been so giving when we've asked them questions. So I value their stories and their opinions and their facts a lot more than maybe what I read on Wikipedia. Try to stay away from Wikipedia as much as possible, but yeah.
Great. Okay, that actually brings us to the end of tonight. There's so many things we could ask, I know, but we have to get you all out of here. But before that, we have to go to the most important part of this evening, which is the raffle. The final raffle for the year. So get those tickets out, people, as the raffle makes its way to the stage. Who would like to draw the raffle? Anyone? Anyone? Regan, you would like to draw the raffle? You're going to draw the raffle.
Do you want to draw it?
Okay. So, standing by. Here we go. Well, I'm glad you asked, Lee Lewis. Tonight, compliments of the very excellent Wynnum Fringe, which everyone should support because the Wynnum Fringe is absolutely incredible. If you win, you are going with a friend to see Nurse Georgie Carroll, Sister Flow 2.0. So, let's all do a little drum roll, everyone together. And the winner is...
F71. 71. Blue 71.
Blue F71. Up the back. Hurrah, hurrah. Well done. You're off to Wynnum. Amazing. Okay, now before we do finish tonight, first Casualty will mark the end of our 2022 season. And next year we're saying hello to 2023. So from David Williamson's Drawing Room to the Forest of Arden to 1970s America, we are ready to entertain you. Don't miss out on your season subscription to a diverse suite of emotional, engaging and entertaining plays happening all year next year. Tonight has been brought to you by our production partners, BDO and Board Matters. And for this production in particular, we are really thankful to our Landmark Productions Fund. They allow us to do shows of significant scale and allow all of these amazing people to bring their collective minds and hearts to create this work for you. And finally, thank you so much to the cast and crew of First Casualty. I was lucky enough to see this play in one of its developments, and it is a blockbuster work, years in the making, from a new playwright who shares with us a voice and world we generally only interface with through a screen. I cannot wait. I love, Adam, that you said you used the word languages, because there are so many languages that are happening and are going to thread themselves together the next week before this goes into previews on Saturday night. And I'm so excited to see what you all reveal. I'm so pumped to see First Casualty. Would you all please thank the cast and crew of First Casualty? And thank you to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you. See you in the theatre.